There we go.
There we are. All right. Well, here on our third installment of the Combined Arms live stream, gun show, gun talk, Tyler and Carl's opinions. And
no lack of those.
Good to yeah, exactly. I believe everybody's entitled to my opinion. YouTube here to see if I can see the questions, because I don't know how this works. I don't know if we'll be able to see the questions on
they pop
on
up in the
stream or not.
Board to the right. Yeah.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah. Remember we tested that on the first one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't remember that kind of stuff, man. Yeah, now, all right, I got to shut that down because it's got a delay on it. I'll let you monitor the questions if we have any. I'm hoping
they'll pop up for us if they do.
Yeah, good deal. All right, so we've had two active shooter situations: active murderer, active killer, scumbags, trying to get fame for themselves by committing evil in the last week and a half.
Two. When was the Nashville one? Was that about 10 days
last
ago?
Week? Yeah, about week and a half.
Yeah. And
hey, my buddy from Texas is on.
Yeah, there we go.
Dixie Bell. He's a good friend of mine down in Texas. Thanks, buddy, for tuning in. Yeah, it was about a week and a half ago. And then Kentucky was yesterday.
Yep. Yesterday.
I didn't hear about it until late last night.
Yeah. Hell, while I'm sitting here, I'll look up some information on that Louisville one from yesterday right quick.
Louisville's a cool town. I used to go there every 2 years for a trade show when I was working for a magazine in the construction industry. And we're actually a utility magazine. And, well, both. It was utility and construction. But really cool town. I'm kind of I don't know how the Louisville police handled that, but I'm going to tell you, man, I think Nashville stepped up like a boss, man. I don't know.
Apparently this dude worked at the bank that he went and shot up.
He worked there, yeah.
He said he showed up at work with a rifle and attacked his colleagues on yesterday.
And that's actually
man down.
You and I were talking about it today. That's actually more common than we get made aware of. You know, the news media focuses on churches and schools, but really, according to the stats that I've seen, about 50% of active shooters are in private businesses. You know, which would include shopping malls, strip malls, grocery stores, and various other private businesses, banks. I'm assuming this one was in a bank, wasn't it?
So yeah, it was in a bank yesterday morning at 8:40 a.m. 25-year-old bank employee named Connor Sturgeon walked in with a rifle and began shooting at his coworkers. Let's see. Two officers originally responded. Here are your hero officers: Officer Nicholas Wilt and what was the other one? C.J. Galloway.
I think you're freezing up there, buddy.
Am I? Because you were too.
I don't know if that's on my end or yours.
Oh, goodness. Did you get everything I said, though? Yeah, one of our internets.
I think we've lost Tyler.
No, can you hear me? Hello? Oh, well, Apparently, I'm the one that's got internet. While he's away and getting his internet figured out, it looks like there were 8 people wounded, including Officer Wiltz and another officer who suffered minor injuries. Carl's back. Let's get him back in here. So, yeah. Sorry, guys, for that. Man, I tell you what, trying to navigate a news article is annoying because it's a bunch of this bull crap, and you got to scroll through a bunch of bull crap to get to like 3 sentences of information.
Yeah, I cut out on you, so I didn't hear most of that.
That's fine.
So
I was just giving.
How much of it did they blame on the quote unquote assault rifle?
Well, you know what? So the title to this article, which is the first one that I pulled up. Well, that's just not working, is it? Let's see, right there, top title, and then just a little bit of information, and then the very next thing down says Louisville mayor makes 2 pleas to state lawmakers to quote unquote end gun violence epidemic. Not the children trafficking that happens at a rate of 5 to 1 of children that are killed with guns, but I could come up with all the other numbers and everything, but it's a gun violence epidemic. It's
yeah. Child trafficking, human trafficking in general.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at some stats last week. 2.6% of Americans murdered in the average year are murdered with rifles of all kinds, meaning not just assault rifles, so-called, but that could include hunting rifles, single shot rifles, bolt action, lever action. We don't know. They don't break it down for us. But 2.6%. On the other hand, 4.3% of people that murdered in the United States per year are murdered with hands, fists, and feet.
Yep.
You have almost double that are beaten and kicked to death that you do with rifles, with long or rifled long guns, I should say. So why is the focus, Tyler? Why is it on long guns? Why is it on rifles?
Super simple. It's super simple because us with long guns are realistically the only way we could defend ourselves against them. So if it ever came down to it, we're a whole lot easier target if all we got's a pistol or a pump action shotgun.
Now, I'm going to throw you a softball. Magazine capacity. Everybody knows that's the problem, right?
Makes no difference.
No. I don't remember the exact stats, but the USCCA put out information a few years ago that if you assuming, let's say that an active shooter is firing 100 rounds per minute, or he could fire 100 rounds per minute with an AR-15, which is a semi-automatic rifle. And let's clear that up front, because I got into a discussion / debate a week or two ago about military grade weapons. The AR-15 is not a military grade weapon. It's not.
Yeah, no, mine's way better than what I was issued.
But it's not fully automatic either.
No, it's not select fire.
It does not have 3-round burst. It does not have full auto capabilities. It is not a military grade weapon. It's a semi-automatic weapon. Of course, the individual I was debating with grew up in a military family, so she knew way more about guns than you and I do.
Well, sure.
You know how ridiculous that is. So, but going back to what I was saying, all right, so you got a 30-round magazine and an AR-15. You can fire 100 rounds. It requires 4 mag changes. Let's say you've got a Glock 19 with a 15 round magazine to get to 100 rounds. All right, I'm going to do math in my head here. It's going to require what? About 7, 8 mag changes.
Yeah, 6.5. 6.5. Yep.
Okay. And assuming you have a 3-second mag change capability, which you and I both know is an eternity, that's a very generous amount of time to change out a magazine.
All right.
At what rate did you lower the amount of rounds fired in that 1 minute span of time? About 20-25%. So 100 rounds versus 75 rounds. But the problem is that they don't shoot in these situations anywhere near either one of those rates of fire.
Yeah, I believe with the exception of 2, the fastest rate of fire of any mass shooting was 1 round per 4 seconds.
Yeah.
So we both know that's extremely slow.
It's about 15 rounds per minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which you could do easily. If you could really do that easily with a revolver.
Yeah.
A 6-shot revolver.
Yeah. I mean, me with a bone stock Glock, I can shoot I can shoot no less than 4 rounds per second.
Yeah.
At 4 rounds a second, I am watching my sights and actually making really well placed shots.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fastest time that I've ever had, it was with a Ruger American pistol, which, as you know, has a very long reset on it. And I got off 5 in about 9/10 of a second.
Yeah.
Into an 8-inch. We're not talking well placed, very well placed. We're talking about into an 8-inch target. So
I mean, that counts.
But you take a gun with a good trigger, and
I've gotten down into the 11s before in splits. So
my fastest is about 0.16. So that's about my 0.15, 0.16 is about the fastest I've ever been clocked. And I consider myself a competent shooter. I'm nowhere near your level. I mean, I've watched you shoot a pistol, and it sounds like it's full auto to me. And I consider myself a competent shooter, an adequate shooter.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, I can get off way more than 100 rounds per minute.
For sure.
With any semi-auto out there on the market.
Yeah.
10 round mags. So magazine capacity is not the issue.
No, because I've seen my buddy that shoots cowboy action. He runs a lever action rifle as fast as I do a pistol.
I've seen some of those guys. I don't know.
It's wild.
Yeah. So, what is the answer? I mean, what do we do? Number one, I mean, this is not anybody calling this an epidemic. It's grown. I mean, there's no question. Active shooter situations have grown. They've gotten more common, but they're really kind of way down the bottom of the food chain in terms of
violent crime.
Violent crime of how many of them are committed or how many lives. And I don't mean in any way to diminish. I mean, any life taken, especially the life of a child, is a tragedy. I mean, there's no question about that. But
exactly,
you alluded to child trafficking and human trafficking earlier. What are we doing about that? Why is that not on the forefront of the news media every night?
Man, so I'll tell you right now, the real epidemic is the fact that we are bending over and taking it and allowing the government that we originally created, we as the people originally created, we're allowing them to strip us away of our rights every day. That's the real epidemic, that we're just bending over and taking it like a bunch of sheep. That's an epidemic, because that in the long run is going to cause way more deaths than what we have right now.
It's the norm.
Yeah, that's an epidemic. All right, so
I'm listening to you. I'll be right back, but I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So I was on Facebook arguing with I say arguing, I just added one comment, honestly, because his comment was somewhere along the lines of how many kids have to die from gun violence for us to see that common sense gun laws are a necessity, or something to that effect. I was like, and then that's right. He brought up the autopsy of a kid that's been shot and how vulgar that is, or how terrible it is. I was like, yeah, I agree. Have you seen the autopsies of the kids that are forced to do meth and heroin and then pushed into sex slavery, sex trafficking, until they are no longer useful? Their bodies are so beaten up and useless that they are no longer of use in the sex traffic world, and then they're either burnt alive or forcefully OD'd and thrown in a ditch. I mean, because both of them are dead. I mean, first off, why does an autopsy even matter? They're dead, right? But like, if you want to talk to me about how terrible it is, the autopsy of a kid that's been shot one time by an accident versus many of the other things that actually happen, I mean, we can start painting those pictures if you want to. I mean, there's been plenty of instances where they have found females that were burnt alive and left in a ditch because they were no longer, like, they were used up. So that's my
You don't hear about that. It's almost like there's an agenda behind it or something.
And I mean, so
and that was sarcasm.
Yeah. If criminals, if it's a crime that is only seen as like a severe criminal perpetrating, then for some reason it doesn't get nationally known news. But if it's some sort of crime that us as law-abiding citizens could be seen as being the perpetrators of, then it's like, oh, it's an epidemic because we're all allowed to have guns, and somehow I'm accountable for this other moronic, freaking mentally ill person doing some crazy nonsense.
Yeah.
Like,
look at it like this. Let's say on average, let's just average it out. How many people do you know that own guns and have been carrying guns? And how long have you and your group of people been carrying guns? And over that span of time and over that amount of people, how many violent crimes have you committed?
None of us, and none.
There you go.
Zero.
Yeah. Have you ever used your handgun without pressing the trigger to thwart a crime?
No.
All right. So you've never been the intended victim of a robbery, a carjacking, anything like that?
No, not yet.
I got four times. Four times.
Where do you live?
I worked in dangerous areas at the time of Birmingham and Atlanta. Yeah. And I was there at times of the morning because I was at one time, one time I played in a band, and that accounted for one of them. The others, I was the only technician for an unmanned fueling site in the states of Alabama and Georgia. I was the one guy. So I'd get calls. These computers weren't what they were in 93 and 94 that they are today. And they would go down at 2:00 in the morning, and I'd have to go down there alone. Ultimately, I started taking a German Shepherd with me, and oddly enough, attempted robberies and all just kind of stopped. But I actually drew a gun 4 times in self-defense. Never pressed the trigger. All right. If you and me are the bloodthirsty killers that the media wants to make us out to be, we ought to have a trail of bodies from here to Mississippi, or from there to Alabama. I mean,
from me to you.
From me to you, exactly. Yeah. The truth is, and I know we both agree on this, we carry guns not only because we don't want to be killed, but we don't want anybody else to be either. I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody. It's the last thing I want to do.
Preservation of life.
But I also want to come home to my family every night.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want innocent people to do the same. Yep. I've only ever had to draw my gun once in my life, and I was in the back alley in Clarksdale, Mississippi, doing my job. I was doing some underground surveying for natural gas pipelines. Anyway, and a dang pit bull would run up on me, and menacingly. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I love dogs, all dogs. I'm even a snake lover. So killing an animal is at the very bottom of my list of priorities. Anyway, I had a shovel in one hand and a gun in the other, and he was going to get the business of either one of them if he kept on. And luckily, we had a little generous stare off, and he decided to go the other way.
Good.
But that was the one time I've ever had to draw my gun.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to shoot a dog. I'm not a snake lover. I don't hate them. I don't love them. I respect them.
Yeah.
I don't kill them for no reason, but I'm not going to have them in my house either. So
yeah. I don't mind them, man. Like anytime there's a chicken or a rat snake or a black runner or something like that.
Well, those are different. I'll let them go. But if I see a copperhead in the yard, I got granddaughters. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah,
I'm not going to let that roll. But
right.
Nah. So the one night and look, let me be completely transparent. One night I worked in downtown Birmingham. This was back in about 1991. And worked the night shift. We loaded trucks. Do what?
I would have been 1 year old.
Thanks. Yeah, I needed to hear that. Appreciate it. I worked the night shift. We loaded trucks, and we got our off time was whatever time we got the trucks loaded and floor swept in this warehouse, right? And we usually get off 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:30 sometimes. And then we'd hang around out in the parking lot and drink beer till the sun came up. And then go home and be back about 1:30, 2 o'clock the next afternoon, something like that, right? Well, it was my night to go get beer. And I ran around the corner to a Quick Mart at 2:30 in the morning, and here's my mistake. I parked in an unlighted area, a dimly lit area, I should say. I could have parked on the street where it was well lit, and I didn't. I parked in an alley, and I call it an alley. It was actually three buildings that were kind of together. So there was one way in and one way out. It wasn't a real alley. It was a parking lot in between three buildings. And I went to get out of my car, and I saw two guys who were obviously on something. And they saw me, and they started coming towards me, yelling at me, hey, man, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Potential mistake, almost mistake number two, was almost left my gun in the car. I didn't have it on my person. I carried it in the floorboard right next to my seat at that time. And I saw them come towards me, so I reached down and stuck it in my back pocket. It was actually a Colt 1911 45, and that I'd bought. It was military surplus. I don't know if the thing would have even fired or not. I mean, I'd shot it a bunch, but it was not a very reliable gun. It had been beat to death by the Navy or Marines, whoever had it. But
yeah.
But I had it, and so mistake number three was, I had the time. In hindsight, looking back, I could have gotten my car, cranked the car up, and got out of there. But I was 21, 22, 23 years old. 23 years old at that time. And,
10-foot tall, bulletproof.
Exactly. I wasn't worried about two guys,
Yeah.
And I kept yelling at them, hey, stop, don't come any closer. I got more and more aggressive. They got about probably 20 feet from me. And after about the third or fourth time, I said, stop. I drew my gun. And both of them started cussing me, calling me a racist and blah, 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 calling me a bunch of ugly names. But guess what? They left. And so that was the first time I ever drew a gun. But going back to the original point, you got a roughly, according to the statistics I've seen, 20 million owners of AR-15s in America, roughly, that we know about. And
yeah, exactly.
And how many murders? And so number one, 2.6% of murders in America are committed with rifles. And by rifles, you were talking about the entire spectrum. There are numerous different variations of rifles.
Yep.
From pistol caliber carbines to single shot Thompson centers to, who knows what all's out there. 2.6% of murders. But the AR-15 gets singled out.
Yeah.
Because the agenda, like you said earlier, it's against you and me, normal, average, God-fearing, family-loving Americans.
Yeah.
Having so-called weapons of war.
It makes no sense, man. And like some of these, me and my buddy were having this conversation this morning, but we were talking about how a neighboring city banned pit bulls because they were having such an issue with pit bull fighting, and how the ban on pit bulls in their city made not a bit of difference in the pit bull fighting, because guess what? Pit bull fighting was already it was already illegal. The freaking people there weren't worried about the laws to begin with. What the hell makes them think that they were still worried about the laws after they started banning what they were using to do illegal things with?
Exactly.
Come on, man. The people who are doing most of these murdering and all this violent crime with some sort of weapon, they ain't supposed to have the dang weapon to begin with. So how the hell is taking those weapons from people that do abide the law and don't do anything wrong from us? How's that supposed to fix it? Like, that doesn't magically make the criminals start caring about laws. Like, that's not going to happen. They're still going to happen, and they're still going to do criminal activity with them. It doesn't make any dang sense.
Well, I told somebody years ago, look, man, instead of outlawing guns, that's not far enough. Let's go all the way. Let's outlaw murder.
It's my point exactly.
But look, I can make another analogy, and this is historically factual. It's proven, 100% fact. All right, you go back to the 1920. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but Prohibition came along. They banned alcohol. There was a scourge of drunkenness throughout America. Really wasn't, but you had the temperance movement and all that.
Let's see, that would have been Amendment 18 and 21. Amendment 18 was prohibition, and 21 reversed it.
Yeah. They wised up on the 21st Amendment and realized, whoops, we made a mistake. Because what they accomplished with that amendment banning alcohol was you had a low-level gang of street thugs known as the Italian Mafia, and that's what they were. They were low level, kind of siphoned off into these small areas, no real power outside of their own turf.
Yep.
And when you banned alcohol, what you did was guys like Al Capone and Meyer Lansky and Lucchese and these guys, they jumped on the fact that alcohol was banned, and they went from a low-level street gang to a multi-billion-dollar criminal enterprise because this knee-jerk law had created a black market for alcohol.
Yeah.
All right. What is going to happen if you ban guns?
Criminals are going to make money selling guns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just like it sounds cliche because it's been around for as long as I can remember. But if you ban guns, only outlaws will have guns. Well, you can call that cliche if you want, but it's a fact.
That's it.
When you banned alcohol, only outlaws had alcohol. The law-abiding citizen who has his gun taken away will either become one of two things. He'll become an outlaw who decides I'm not going to comply, or he'll become a potential victim. He'll become a target.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. An easy target. Yeah.
So, all right, let's segue from there. Let's say Tyler is the principal of a school or the pastor of a church, and you are concerned about these situations. What do you do?
Well, it's funny you say that. I used to be the director of safety and security for a church. It's simple. I make sure that my staff is adequately equipped to face that danger, and that the equipment we have on hand, doors, mag locks, automated systems, security cameras, so on and so forth, are up to date and functioning properly. And I have some sort of quarterly audit for all of that. And then I'm going to have some sort of quarterly or semi-annually annual training for my staff. It's pretty simple.
What about the gun-free zone? You're going to put a sign out on the window saying we're a gun-free zone?
No. Telling people to not chew bubble gum would probably be a better sign.
Yeah, that was heavily rhetorical.
Yeah. No. Look, man. Take this for what it is, but I've seen many a signs that says no guns allowed, and I just open the door and walk right on in. I'm like, I don't give a shit. Your sign means nothing to me, and I'm a law-abiding citizen.
Yeah.
Imagine what it means to someone that ain't a law-abiding citizen.
And that's not a violation of the law unless they notice your gun and ask you to leave, and at that point it's trespassing. But my general rule of thumb is if you don't allow my gun in your business, I don't patronize your business. It's simple as that.
It's gonna so believe it or not, I think that's gonna be the social norm and conditioning that's coming up. I think that we're going to make carrying a gun such a taboo and extreme thing that we're going to make so many businesses, especially big businesses that we rely on a daily basis, ban a gun and take extreme measures to not allow people in, just like we did with the COVID mask thing. You got to wear a mask. That it's going to be a struggle for us to go through about our daily life and still exercise our Second Amendment right. I think they're gonna make it such an inconvenience on us through the social norm and conditioning, and that's how people are gonna eventually give up their rights. I made a comment the other day. I was like, people got all these opinions and standards until it is too much of an imposition to their quality of life or convenience. I don't remember the exact verbiage of it, but that's pretty much what I said.
Well, and I think there's a possibility. You're correct. That's certainly what they're trying to do.
Yeah, they did it with COVID. They saw how forceful they could make us wear a mask.
Yeah,
and shut us down.
I'm hopeful. Of course, neither one of us can prove either one of our theories, but I guess only time will tell. I'm hopeful that, in my county, for example, the governor put out a mask mandate. My sheriff said, we're not going to enforce that. And you saw very few people in my area wearing masks. It was probably...
I walked up on a job site this morning, man, and the dude that was picking up some stuff, he got out of his truck. First thing he did was put on a mask. I'm like...
I'm hopeful that... And let's be honest about it. I'm not casting aspersion or pointing any fingers, but the average American does not really understand liberty, doesn't understand freedom very much.
They have a very, very, very superficial viewing of freedom. They really don't understand what it actually means. True freedom is anarchy.
Yeah, and that would go against the American concept of freedom, or at least the Jeffersonian concept of it, because anarchy can go, it can lapse. It actually is, more on the left than what we realize in a lot of respects. The Jeffersonian model, on the other hand, would be, Washington, D.C. doesn't have a say in anything we're doing. It's a state issue. And if you go back, and this is probably a long, lengthy discussion for another time, but the Second Amendment, for example, was never adopted as a prohibition or a restriction against the states. It was adopted as a restriction solely against the general government, what we sometimes call the federal government. Your state constitution left was what defined what our rights in terms of bearing arms were. Oddly enough, when we followed that model up until 1968, you had a much stronger right to bear arms. But I'll give you a quote off the top of my head from one of the great unknown founders of America, which was St. George Tucker. He was a peer, or a cohort of Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, John Taylor, Carolina, and these guys. He actually wrote the commentaries on Blackstone's law, and I'm going off of memory here, but he said something to the effect of, wherever standing armies are kept up, and when the right to bear arms is in any way diminished, liberty, if not already annihilated, is on the brink of destruction. The whole point of the Second Amendment was to keep the populace armed. When they were debating the Bill of Rights in general, and the Second Amendment in particular, they noticed that under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, that Congress had the right to arm the militia, and they reasoned that if they can arm the militia, they could likewise disarm the militia. And that was where the Second Amendment came from. On the other hand, it was, if we have an armed populace, then a standing military force is unnecessary. And so when the Second Amendment talks about the militia, guess who they're talking about? You and me. Every capable, able-bodied citizen.
Yep.
And up through the 19th century, late into the 19th century, your local county would form militias, and they would prescribe methods and standards of training, and you had better be there. You didn't have a choice. If you were between the age of, let's say, 18 and 40, I don't remember exactly what it was, but that's how common it was. Oddly enough, you didn't have a lot of mass shootings and violent crimes at that time. I wonder why.
I tell you that, unfortunately, the militias that we have today are a bunch of jokes.
Now they are, yeah, and I hate to say that, but
they're a bunch of wannabes.
Well, I don't want to narrow it too much. I think there are a lot of those guys that have their hearts in the right place. They've got the right ideas, but then you got a lot of ego involved there too. That it's, I don't want to open a can of worms here, but a lot of people that they do stuff like that for the attention, more so than. Yeah, and the idea that any of them would actually stand up to the government, that's not going to happen.
Dude, I've met these people that are in militias. They wouldn't last. They wouldn't last the first wave, man. I'll tell you right now. Like I've met guys in militias that don't even know what months you can go grow a tomato. And I know that sounds simple and stupid. Like, man, I could just go to the store and buy a tomato, but like.
Until you can't.
Like,
right.
Do you really think that those 3 Remington 870s and a bunch of Ruger AR-15s that have like the cheapest, crappiest optic you found at Academy on it are going to do you any good when the economy's actually been shut down for 6 months and like you have no easy access to food? How good is that all that ammo and that gun's going to do you. Oh, and by the way, how are you going to do with your hypertension and your diabetes when you can't go get any sort of pharmaceuticals anymore?
Yeah. And not only can that happen, it has happened in America.
Yeah.
It happened in the Great Depression.
Yeah, the 20.
I mean, I grew up with those people. My great-grandparents were alive until I was 28 years old.
And I bet you they had a farm and they were always like taking care of their own stuff and had surplus of stuff on hand.
They did not have a farm, but they my great grandmother was there was a network of little old ladies in South Alabama where they lived. And when I say South Alabama, I mean South Alabama, 7 miles from the Florida border, right?
Oh,
and you know, my great grandmother had pecan trees that her and my great granddad planted in the 1930s out in the yard, and she traded pecans all over town for field peas and blackberries, and they had freezers full of food, full of the stuff they canned. I've actually got the canner that my great grandmother used during the Great Depression and during World War II when all of her sons were off, you know, at war. Because, but you know, going back to your point, you're right. We've gotten soft. We've been lulled into a consumerist,
a convenience.
Yeah,
we are a convenience society. If it ain't convenient, it ain't getting done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how we veered off topic of active shooters, but it kind of, you know, it all fits. It kind of all goes together. There was a point in time where if a man walked into a bank with a rifle and decided he's going to shoot the place up, he might have gotten all 3 shots, you know, before he was beat to death, bludgeoned to death, shot to death, and he would not be held as any type of hero. And according to and I believe this, according to the USCCA's documentation, I don't think this is coincidental, but the rise in these people has coincided with the rise in social media. Everybody's an instant celebrity today, you know.
Yep.
It's a societal issue, and if the media wanted to be honest about it, they need to quit pointing the finger at people like you and me who may or may not own AR-15s or semi-automatic rifles, and they need to look inward because they're feeding it. You know, they're the ones putting this stuff out on 24-hour news until it's not exciting anymore or until the next tragedy comes along, and they're steering the narrative.
Fear mongering and scare tactics, man.
Sure.
It sells well and it works. Media has been using that for many years. It's called propaganda.
Sure it is. Absolutely.
Yep. Man, yeah, I don't know how we got so veered off on. I guess because I'm almost tired of how weak we have gotten as a society. And like I know grown men that don't know how to operate a fire extinguisher. Wrap your head around that for a minute. Like, you're a grown ass man with kids and a wife. You need to tell me you don't know how to operate a fire extinguisher? God bless America. So did you know I used to be a bank manager? I used to be a manager.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, you're in Alabama, so you're familiar with Regions Bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a manager for Regions Bank, and I was the branch. I was assistant manager for Pearl, Mississippi, and then West Jackson, Mississippi, and then I managed for Northwest Jackson, Mississippi. And of course, we got 30 branches across the Tri-County area, and we don't have security. And I say we like I'm still there. I ain't been there in like almost 2 years, and so we don't have security. They have nothing. And even when they did, it was a roamer, which for those listening that don't know what that means is they would just pop in once every 3 or 4 hours just to say hello and sign a logbook to prove that they were there, and they were gone again.
Probably at the same times every day.
Yeah, they're very predictable. And eventually, when the security contracts ran out, they just didn't re-up them because they don't care about our safety. I mean, take that for wherever you want. Regions doesn't care about the safety of their employees. They can sue me or whatever, so I don't give a crap. It's the truth. Because I ain't saying I'm the most qualified person in the world, but my resume is pretty daggone lengthy, right? I've done a lot of things to prove that I can be trusted to carry a gun and make the right decisions with a gun if the time ever arises. And they still denied me and pretty much laughed in my face when I asked if I could have the ability to carry a gun while at work. Straight up, if I would have been caught with that gun, I would have been fired on the spot.
Yeah,
because they don't care about our safety at all. Case in point, a deranged he, she, whatever. I don't know. I think it was a girl, but it looked like a guy. I don't know. Right. So I don't know. Bebopped up in our branch one day. So my office is like on the very opposite end of the entry doors, and I can't see people entering. And it's a double door system anyway. By the time I see her in my lobby, she's got a pit bull with her and waving around a knife. She just cracked out. Whatever. So I finally coerced her to get the hell out of the building. I locked the doors. We had already called 911. It took JPD 45 minutes to send an elderly man with a badge to come check on us.
Wow.
45 minutes. Corporate security, God bless him. He did what he could. Is what it is, but they're 20 plus minutes from the branch anyway, and corporate security is just a dude that gets to decide who went and does audits and things like that. So I don't know. I don't know why I said all this. I don't know if the guy in Louisville, I don't know if that bank had any sort of security or not. I haven't looked that deeply into it. I need to look deeper into it. I'll probably do that when I get off of here. But even if they did have security, let me ask the viewers this. Even if you do have some security guard, I've met security guards. They usually make anywhere from $10 to $14 an hour, and they are they're one of two options. They're retired and they can't do a PT test anymore, so they're barely getting by. Or two, they couldn't become a cop to begin with because they're lacking in some sort of ability. Do you trust that person to your safety? I don't.
Valid question.
I trust my dog more than I do most security guards. I'll be honest with you. But even if you do have a security guard present in your building, if you feel like you're safe because that security guard exists, you are being lazy.
And you have and all of that's assuming he's armed. A lot of them are not even armed.
Yeah. So I used to work for a private security company, and they have a contract with a hospital down in South Mississippi, and the contract states that he can't be armed. What the hell am I going to do if somebody bebops up in there with an AR-15? Stare them to death? Throw a stapler at them? Like what?
Well,
that's the dumbest thing ever.
My nephew was he worked as a security guard when he was in his early 20s. He's still in his early 20s. He's 21, 22. And he's proficient with a firearm. He shot some competitions and been through several classes, not only with me but with other people as well. And he's more he's proficient at the least. But his security company would not allow him to have a gun, so they've got him out in the middle of a parking lot at a car dealership in one of the most dangerous areas of Birmingham at midnight to 11 to 7 or whatever it was. And all he's got to protect himself with is a walkie-talkie.
Ain't no way.
That's it. And making $10 an hour or whatever.
I would tell him where they could shove that $10 an hour.
Yeah. Well, I told him, I said, look, I'm gonna tell you right now. I understand you got to have a job. I'll take my chances. If you fire me from a $10 an hour job, I mean, what the hell do I care? I go buy groceries. You're not going to tell me I can't carry a gun. Period.
Absolutely. Oh man, I remember they. So one of the things with regions is that at any time, especially if there's a large amount of money missing, like there's some sort of outage, like a miscalculation or whatever, right? And so they're searching for money. One of the things is they're going to search your vehicle looking for that money, whatever. And or if they have reason to believe you have a gun in your vehicle, they can search it. And I'm like, no, you can't. No, you can't. The property, like you would have to be in a fenced in area for a federal building to have that right to search my vehicle without a warrant. Otherwise, you can kiss my rear end and go get a warrant. You ain't going through my vehicle.
In Alabama, it's law that no matter what your employer says, you have a right to have a firearm in your vehicle.
Yeah. Right? So yeah, in Mississippi, your vehicle is your extension of your home as well.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And I told him, I was like, y'all are smoking crack if you think that that's legal. Like, y'all are just being bullies, thinking that you can get away with that. That is unconstitutional, and you can't legally do that. And I'll tell you right now, if you do somehow get in my vehicle and start searching it unlawfully without a warrant, I'm going to sue the ever living crap out of you.
Yeah,
and I'm going to win, because that you seriously violated my constitutional rights, and there ain't no law protecting you to do that.
Well, and think about this. What if you remember? You may be a little young to remember this, because I'm wanting to say this was 1995, 96.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't remember.
the first active shooter situation that I recall occurred in Pearl, Mississippi.
Yeah, at the high school.
Yeah, yep. And it was a 13 or 14-year-old kid.
Yep.
And you had a principal who was a Army Reserve captain who ran a quarter of a mile off campus to his truck, retrieved his gun, and ran a quarter of a mile back and put an end to it before the police got there. And didn't shoot the kid. He stopped him. Which is highly unusual that an active shooter lives through. There, you got to realize, and I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the viewers, but most of them know that they've got about 10 minutes to do all the damage that they can do, and and their main objective is a body count, to kill as many people as they can kill indiscriminately in the shortest amount of time possible, and a lot of them are copycats of the scumbags out in Columbine. Right, and but this kid, I remember thinking, God love that principal, but what if he'd have been allowed to carry that gun on his body in school, or what if he'd have been allowed to park on school grounds and not have to run a half-mile round trip under stress? And going back, look, let's segue from that to you kind of alluded to it just a little earlier, talking about in your bank situation. We discussed this today briefly. 50% of active shootings are not in schools or churches. Those are the ones that get the most media attention, but 50% of them are in private businesses, banks, shopping malls, strip malls, disgruntled ex-employees, what have you. The other active shooter situation I remember from the late 90s, probably maybe early 2000s, happened about a couple of miles down the street from where I worked. It was a disgruntled ex-employee who had been fired, and he came in and shot the workplace up, and I want to say he killed 6 people. Oh, and by the way, he was using revolvers. Did not have an AR-15, didn't have a semi-automatic rifle. He came back with 3 or 4 6-shot revolvers. And that was what he did all of his carnage with.
Yeah.
So this idea of attacking the gun and attacking law-abiding citizens and creating these gun-free zones, by the way, and you know this, the stats that I've seen, 79% of active shootings are in gun-free zones, and so are 85% of deaths from active shootings.
Yep.
And on the other hand, we've got the Elijah Dickens. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing his first name right. In Indiana, who took the scumbag out at 40 yards.
Yep.
Or
in rounds,
up to 40 yards. I don't think he fired all 10 shots from that distance, but And that leads me to another question I was thinking I wanted to ask you today because I know my answer. But let's say, all right, so you and your family are in a mall. I don't go to malls. We don't have any malls around where I live. But let's say we do go to one, okay? And that type of situation breaks out. What do?
Same thing he did.
All right.
If I could fire off those rounds without any sort of collateral.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think my first response is all right, let's break it down like this. If I see the individual, he's within eye shot, and I believe, I've got a clear shot. If not, I think my first reaction is to get my family out of there, to get them to safety.
I don't really have family, but yes, if I did, I would. Yes,
for
sure.
What you absolutely, and I'm saying this for the benefit of the viewers, and I think you're going to agree with me on this. What you do not want to do is draw your gun and go running towards the gunfire.
Yeah, within reason. So if
gun
that
gunfire
is
waving the gun around, running towards where the shots are coming from.
Yeah, so without clear visual verification of what's going on, I wouldn't go blindly. But if I could see exactly what was going on, and I knew if I didn't, more innocent lives would be lost.
Right.
Yeah. But if it's all distant, if I'm in one corner of Walmart and someone's blasting up the other side,
right?
I ain't going to Walmart. It's a bunch of communists. All right. So if I'm in one side of Kroger and somebody's blasting up the other side, I'm gonna stay my happy ass on the other side with my family hunkered down waiting.
Yeah.
But hopefully there's someone like me on the other side that has within shooting range of that and can take care of business. And
that's what I'm getting at. But here's the deal. All right. So if I'm within eye shot and I see this guy and I've got a clear shot at him, I'm probably going to take it. I'm going to tell my family, y'all run that way. And I'm going to take the shot or shots because it's going to take shots. It's not going to take
the pistol.
Very unlikely to put him down with one shot from any handgun. Any handgun. Okay.
Any handgun.
But if I don't recognize, I don't see where the shots are coming from, my first duty is to my family. I don't want to go running through the mall or the store trying to play Rambo with my gun drawn because you got to realize the cops are going to show up. They're hopped up on adrenaline too, and they're very liable to think you're the killer, you're the shooter.
Yeah, exactly.
And that actually happened in Birmingham a few years ago. Cop, well, he wasn't the guy that got killed. Was not one of the good guys. He was one of the instigators. They thought it was an active shooting. It was really an argument between two guys. But one guy went running through the mall with his gun drawn, and cop told him to stop. He didn't stop. He shot him in the head and killed him. And here's where, you and I talk about training a lot, training, practice, all the stuff that goes into this. You not only got to train your mechanics, you got to train your mental ability, your thinking, your visualization. What would I do if this happened?
Yep.
What would I do if that happened? And that's where, that's another part of your training is to mentally put yourself in that situation. So if it does happen, God forbid, you don't have to try to formulate a plan or a reaction on the fly under an extreme stressful situation.
Failing to plan is planning to fail.
Sure, that's right.
Yep.
Well, buddy, it is 8:30. Do we have any questions? Hey, Eric, how are you, man? Good to see you in here, buddy.
I just saw some good comments, some good commentary, but no questions.
Pete, how are you, buddy? I don't think we know each other, but I'm glad to meet you tonight, man.
Yep, Pete's a buddy of mine in South Texas, the Beaumont area.
All right.
Yep.
Well, Dixie Bell's name is not Dixie Bell. I know his real name, but I won't disclose it on here. He's one of my adversaries in the SCV oratory contest every year. And he's going to try to unseat me this year. He tried last year too. We're good friends. We got a very friendly rivalry.
Yeah, he says no one goes to malls anymore. So believe it or not, I am about a mile and a half from an outdoor style mall. And
he says you're going down.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're a mile and a half from where?
Oh, my grammar Nazi mind is going crazy because he spelt "your" as possessive. But anyway, it's an outdoor style mall, and it's in a very like upstanding area. Like the PD around here, they don't play no games. You usually ain't got no problems around here. So, but we do have an outlet mall ordeal in Pearl, and it's pretty craptastic. I went there because I needed something at a specific store that there was there recently. I was like, oh yeah, we got an Under Armour store here. And man, the people that were there were very less than ideal. I was like, God bless. Am I in West Jackson? What's going on here? And then we have another indoor mall that's pretty craptastic as well that I wouldn't go into. 10 plus years ago, yeah, no problem, man. But nowadays, heck no. Where they're located, the people that go there, it ain't worth the risk. Realistically, could I go there and it not be a problem? Yeah, sure, bro. But it ain't worth the risk, especially when I got Amazon. Dang, the king communist himself, Jeff Bezos, will have something that I need to my door in like 2 days.
Yeah.
Remember what I said about
I'm really fortunate. I live in a rural county that is behind the times 50 years in all the good ways. We still have problems around here, but we're an hour between, or an hour from north of Birmingham, an hour south of Huntsville. And we got a great sheriff. Our sheriff is, he and his whole department.
We got a good sheriff too.
Awesome guys, man. I've talked to several of them that have told me flat out if they ever repeal the Second Amendment, which by the way takes a ratification of 3/4 of the states, but if they ever try to override it or hand down some ruling, the Supreme Court doesn't issue rulings; they issue opinions. We've forgotten that, and that's part of the problem. But disarming citizens, our sheriff, our entire department, well, that will not be enforced where we are. And the neighboring counties all said the same thing. And that's what we need. But
the county that our state capital is in, and then most of our Delta, I could see them going anti-constitution very easily.
Yeah.
But the rest of us, nah.
Well, that's my hope for America is the rural areas.
Yeah.
I think when you get outside the cities, and I don't think it's by coincidence that if you look at the red state, blue state map, where you have a majority red state, the blue areas are urban areas. And
yeah, they really are.
The rural areas are real America, in my opinion. And I have hope that if they ever do just come out and say, yeah, we're going to ban guns, that rural America will see that as, that's a bridge too far. We're not going there. I hope that.
You would hope so.
In another generation, who knows? Because they are certainly propagandizing us to death, and look, I don't know how all of our listeners, or you for that matter, view this. I think you'll agree with me, but your public school system, I hate to tell you, but that's the number one propaganda mill in America.
Well, for sure, man. Like, look, you want to control your society, start feeding the kids with a bunch of nonsense in the way that you want them to think and live, and in 40 years, they'll be the ones running the country.
Yeah, that's right.
Too easy. Kids are the easiest people in the world to manipulate.
Yeah. Karl Marx said it, and I'm maybe mangling this a little bit, but lead a people away from their history, and they are easily persuaded. If you can separate them from their history, from their heritage,
they're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, and they will be easily persuaded towards anything. And I don't see that going on where I live, but I know it does in other places. I mean,
it definitely happens where we live. Like me and my girlfriend have made it up in our head. If we ever have a kid, man, that they're either getting private school. There's a pretty decent private school right down the road from me, or homeschooled, one of the two. Because the private schools, man, they're a bunch of nonsense. So,
yeah. I had my oldest son in private school in first and second grade, and I actually pulled him out and put him in in our county school, which, believe it or not, was more conservative.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
yeah, we don't really have any conservative schools around here except for private schools, and even then, that's slim pickings.
Well, I won't say it on camera, but I could tell you some anecdotes about our county school. It's not your typical public school, and I'm a history buff. I'm a history nut. Okay.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you one other thing. All right, so let's say, and this is not necessarily directly active shooter related, but it could be third party interventions.
Yeah, defending an innocent party that's not a loved one or yourself. Yeah,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you intervene in that? I think your answer is probably going to be similar to mine. It's kind of one of these. It depends on the circumstance.
Yeah, for sure, it does. So, the answer is going to be yes with conditions. Yes, with the condition of you are 100% sure that is an innocent party that you're defending, and as well as that by defending it, you are not incriminating yourself, and also that there will not be any other collateral damage.
Right.
So no harm to others that don't need harm doing upon them. You're not incriminating yourself in any type of way. So that if yay, I won the gunfight, but now I'm in prison. I can't take care of my family that way. Then you still lost, right? And then also, again, if you know for certain that the person you're defending is 100% an innocent party.
Yeah, I saw a situation. It was a reenactment of a situation where they took actual police reports and then they reenacted it with professional actors, videoed it, and they had a panel of legal and tactical experts to kind of break down, what happened. And there was a situation where, and this is how I taught it to active shooters. It was active killer, not active shooter. The guy didn't have a gun, I don't believe. But the guy gets out of his car in the parking lot of the strip mall, and he sees two men rolling around in the parking lot, and one of them's on top of the other one, just beating the daylights out of him, choking him. Mm-hmm. And our hero pulls up, he draws his gun and shoots and kills the guy that's coming out on top. Turns out the guy that's on top is the older brother of the other guy who was a diagnosed schizophrenic who was about to walk into a jewelry store with a knife and indiscriminately attack the patrons in that store.
Yeah. Again, you got to be 100% sure.
Yeah. So exactly what you said. Sometimes it's like you and I have talked about before. Sometimes the answer is not a gun.
A lot of times the answer ain't a gun.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of you. Again, to me, that's part of your training. People think of training and practice as going out and being able to hit an 8-inch target at 20 feet, and hey, I'm good to go. I get the target. Now, when you can do that, man, you're about 1% of the way there. There's so much more. You've got to learn your moral and your legal responsibilities, in addition to shooting under stress and being able to to transition and to being able to draw the gun and all these other things. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of mental preparedness that needs to go into your decision to carry a gun.
Yep.
and I think I'm just making this up, but I bet I'm pretty close. I bet I'm being generous. I bet that 90% of gun carriers out there have never thought about that. And it's probably close to 99%, you know?
Yeah. And then I'll go one more step further. What about your spiritual fitness in case you lose?
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. That's a very valid point. You know, we're not knights in shining armor. You know, it ain't comic book. It's the real thing. You take on a massive responsibility when you decide to concealed carry or carry a firearm for self-defense of yourself or your family. It is a major responsibility, and you've got to put a lot more into it than firing a box of ammo once a year.
It's just as much a liability as it is an asset.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was talking to a couple of potential students on the phone today, and you know, I like telling them, you know, you got two fights you got to win. You got to win the actual fight, the violent confrontation, and then there's a very strong possibility you're going to try to win the legal fight after that's over with. So you better have your ducks in a row. You better be in the right in everything you do.
Absolutely.
You know, and they called me and asked me, you know, what do you charge? What are the hours for a basic course? And I said, my basic course is not hours, it's days. You know, because it takes more than one course to have the basics down for concealed carry. I mean, when the average person thinks of basics, they think of what ammo do I select? How do I load my gun? How do I hit the target? How am I safe? All right. When I think of basics, I think of how well do you draw the gun under stress on a shot timer, you know, because that's one of the best sources of stress we can implement in training. And how well do I run a 5x5 drill, or, you know, and then in addition to the basics, how well do I understand castle doctrine, stand your ground? How well do I know my legal and moral responsibilities? You know, there's a whole lot more to the basics than what is written in the operator's manual of your firearm.
Big facts. Yeah, and you know, a lot of the stuff that we consider intermediate training, the general populace would consider advanced.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And I was there. And look, I was there once. You probably were too. You know, there was a point in time where you know, look, I tell all my, I'm nowhere near the shooter you are. I mean, I've watched you shoot.
There was a time that I thought transitioning from a rifle to a pistol was an advanced skill.
Yeah, and I saw you do it the other day. And you know, what, 12 or 14 overall shots and 5.7, and I'm sitting there thinking, crap, man, I can't fire into the gun or into the ground that fast, you know. But you know, I tell all my students, you know, I'm an adequate shooter. I am. That's what I am. I'm adequate.
Yeah. And that's all you need. Look, I don't expect anybody to obsess over this like I do. I don't expect anybody to do that. That requires a pretty extreme level of obsession and time and resources that I know not many people can afford.
Yeah. But if my average student will get to my level of adequacy,
oh man, we'd be great.
They'll be so far ahead. They won't. I mean, you have no idea. Or they have no idea, and they also don't know how easy that is to accomplish, because it's again, you know, I don't put in hours and hours and hours of training. I put a lot of I probably spend more time on mental conditioning than I do on physically drawing my gun and shooting it. I spend more time probably visualizing what would I do in this situation, what would I do in that. I mean, I know my skills with a gun. I know I can get better, but again, there's a balance there between being the fast, but between being Jerry Michalik or Rob Latham, and also having the mental capacity to make the right decisions under stress. And do all these other things. And I think that a lot of that is, you know, what your average person never considers. They think, hey, I got to go, I can hit the target, I'm good to go. And honestly, most of them can't hit the target.
No. It's funny you mentioned Jerry Mitchell. I was talking to him at the Gator Classic last year because we have it at his range. And I was like, man, I'm still struggling with the visual patience thing. And he said, man, just keep at it. He said, I was fast long before I was accurate. And I was like, man, I'm so glad you said that.
He's a real guy, man. He just seems like such a down to earth guy.
He is. He very much is. He is cool as a fan, man. His whole family, his wife is cool as a fan too. She's just a good old Southern lady, just great people.
His daughter's a pretty good shooter too.
Oh, Lena, yeah. So that's a cool place, man. If you ever get a chance to go shoot a match over there, it's pretty awesome. Little shootout lane right off I-20 and right before you get to Shreveport.
Well, that's something that I have made myself. I promised myself this year I'm going to shoot more competitions.
Yeah, it's fun.
Because I've only shot 2 in my entire 2 official competitions.
Yeah,
and I think it's a great opportunity to learn, to pick up tips from people who are better than you, and about 50% of them at these competitions are better than me at the ones I've shot in so far. So there's a lot of learning opportunities there. I gotta find the time. I gotta make myself find the time to do it.
I put out a video when I first started my YouTube channel, actually, and it was the difference in taking classes versus shooting competitions. I'm gonna tell you right now, man. And I know me and you make our money teaching classes, and this sounds counterintuitive, but you will become a much better gun handler and shooter. Just those 2 things, right? So don't hear what I ain't saying, but you will become a better gun handler and shooter with less money and less time shooting competitions than you will taking classes.
Yeah. I think you've got to have a certain level of competency before you enter into any aspect of the shooting or the competition world. You don't want to show up not knowing the basics. And, because then you got safety issues that come into play.
Sure, yeah.
So to me, it would be a mixture of both is what I would.
Have your basic understanding of safety and be able to, draw the gun out the holster in a safe manner, load, make ready. But once you know how to do that, man, I'm telling you, your reloads are going to get way faster. Your transitions are going to get way faster. Your footwork's going to get way better. Like your visual processing skills are going to advance way faster with a much better return of your investment because you can go shoot a match for a $25 entry fee and 150 rounds of ammo. So you're looking at, 40. So for $60 total, you can go get in 6 draws, a bunch of target transitions, mini trigger pulls, and then you get to be around a bunch of other people that are way better than you at the same time. So
yeah. And most of those people are more than willing to help you out.
Absolutely.
I think we talked about this maybe in the first episode, but it's the only sport I've ever seen where your competition will give you tips.
Yeah.
That you can potentially later use to beat them with,
I've seen people give out ammo at competitions.
Oh, yeah. Same here. We had a guy that I shot a Steel Challenge competition last summer, the very first one I'd ever been to, ever seen or anything. Yeah. And I've thought about getting into competitions for years, just never did it, never found the time. And a buddy of mine, Chris Stewart, who is, by the way, who just won top in the state of Alabama and Steel Challenge, but he shot IEPA and all that stuff for years too. USPSA, he shot all of it for over the last 35 years or so. But he taught me into going, and we had a guy up there that had bought some cheap ammo, and he started having malfunction after malfunction, and everybody there was saying, "Hey, here, I'll trade you a box of mine for a box of yours."
Yeah.
You don't see that in soccer, football, baseball, any other sport. You don't have the camaraderie there.
That's true.
But the other aspect of it that I like is that it induces a certain level of stress.
Yeah.
Unless you're like me, and I just refuse to be stressed.
Yeah, if you care, you would start getting stressed out again if you got to a level where you actually cared about being better. And
well, I go into it kind of like our mutual friend Johnny, and that is, look, I know I'm not going to be the top dog here.
Yep.
And I'm here to learn and have a good time and see what I can pick up and improve. If I ever got up into where I'm an A-class, master class shooter, like you and Chris, all right, at that point, I probably would stress myself out worse than you could imagine.
It's more stressful now than it's ever been. And I'm at 80. I actually dropped down. I was at 83% not long ago, 83.5% recently, and I screwed it up at a classifier match and went down to 81%. But yeah, it's more stressful now than it's ever been.
Yeah, and everybody out there that's watching this, Tyler is way more well versed in this than I am. But I want to encourage you, if you get the opportunity to go shoot in a competition, you're not only going to get the advantage of training under stress, you're going to get the advantage of seeing your own weaknesses. And, we can talk about drills on another episode of this, but the point of drills and one of the points of competition and one of the points of training and practicing is to know where do I need work, for me, I know I'm accurate. I mean, I hit one target 3 times.
Yeah.
In a competition. You know why I shot it 3 times? Because I'm suck at shot calling and thought I'd missed it the previous 2 shots.
Yeah.
And so, hey, what does that tell me? Shot calling is a weakness. I know that I'm slow coming out of the holster and getting my sights aligned. I know I'm slow and draw the first shot. Once I'm on target, I can ring your bell, okay? But getting on target's another issue.
I shot a match. It was a fun match. It was an outlaw USPSA style match, and the scoring was inverse. So like deltas were worth 5 points and alphas were only worth 1. But anyway, it was just a fun little deal where we had crawfish in the end. It was just a fun April Fool's match. Anyway, I went every stage with having a sub-second draw to first shot, and 4 of those stages required you to start outside the box. So I had to step into the box, draw the gun, and shoot the target, and I did all those in less than a second.
Yeah.
Everybody was on there was this one chick. We'd never shot together. We knew each other, Ashley Yates. We got to the next stage because she had just seen me do it, and she's like, "Oh, wow, that's fast." And we get up to the next stage. She's like, "Yeah, that's gonna be a 1 second draw." I was like, "What'd you say?" She said, "Yeah, that's gonna be a 1 second draw." I was like, "You think so?" I was like, "You think I can? I think I can get an alpha and a 0.8 something." Like, she's like, "Man, no way." Sure enough, stepped in. It was a tuxedo target, so like, no shoots on each side, so you only had just the A section.
Right.
I had 2 shots on target, and I think it was like the first one was like a 0.86 or whatever, and then like a 15 or so splits, like a 101, 102 second, and it was like an alpha with just one just under it in the Charlie, and that was again one where you had to like step off into the shooting area. You couldn't just like stand there and draw type of things. It's all fun, man.
I can almost do that if my hand's already on the gun. Almost.
You can do it. It's easier than it sounds.
I was practicing out here in the yard the other day, and I hit a 0.49 out of an IWB holster. I mean, a 1.49. Let me rephrase that.
I was about to say
1.49. Yeah. Any times that I give you, you got to put a 1 or a 2 in front of it. That's automatic. All right.
Oh goodness.
A 1.49 out of my carry holster.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's the fastest I've ever gotten an A-zone hit. So yeah.
Well, you don't carry appendix either, so there's a little bit of a slower draw time with your 3-4 o'clock style carrying, just because there's just more movement. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, the appendix is. I mean, you know, I would never discourage anybody from going there. Me personally, I look. I carried at 4 o'clock for years.
Yeah.
Over the last decade or so, I have worked myself up to the 3 o'clock position. Mm-hmm. So by the time I'm dead, I might be at appendix.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I started out, I did the 4 o'clock thing, and then again, like you said, the 3 o'clock, and I stayed there for a while, for probably the first 4 or 5 years of me carrying a gun, and it wasn't until 2000 and I want to say 15, maybe 16 that I got my first appendix style holster, and actually started giving it a go. But I haven't looked back since.
Well, you know, you and Memphis are for it. That's persuasive to me, but I'm just not there yet, man. Old habits die hard. You see all this gray in my beard, right?
Hey, look, man, I know a guy, Samuel Middlebrook. Look him up. He owns Red Hawk Firearms Institute. Anyway, Red Hawk Firearms training. Goodness, that was my brain's going dead. It's 9 o'clock at night. He has a sub-second draw from a 3 o'clock carry position with like almost no effort.
Yeah,
so it's doable. Just
my buddy Chris is he's telling me he's going to have me sub-second before long. We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
It's doable.
I think he's probably around a 0.8.
Yeah.
9. You know, if I could get there, I'd be ecstatic. But I just, you know, my old bones don't move that slow, man, and my brain don't work that fast.
Yeah, I've gotten to where 0.9s are comfortable for me.
Yeah.
0.8s are pushing pretty good. You know, I'm really having to put some effort into it. 0.7s are doable, but it's a crapshoot on shot placement, and I'm really just going off proprioceptive indexing instead of actually seeing the sights.
Yeah.
And this is all inside the waistband. Outside the waistband, I was in a Steve Anderson class at the end of February, and we were like, this is the first morning, right? And we go up to do a draw first shot challenge at 5 yards or 7 yards, rather, excuse me. And on the first try, I whip out a 0.52.
Wow.
Of course, this is from outside the waistband competition rig with a Glock 34. And which I shot just over the shoulder of it. So I pulled it. I pulled the trigger just before the muzzle dropped back down at the very end of the presentation. But I was just pushing really hard for speed, and that's the only way you're going to get. You're going to have to be okay with not hitting and just making your hands move that fast.
Yeah.
Eventually, I settled down in the low 0.6s with a C-zone hit at 7 yards. So.
Well, and a lot of it you touched on earlier is cutting down the unnecessary movement. You know, don't chase your gun. You know, you don't need to be ducking and dodging and all that kind of crap going for your gun. I mean, really, it's you know, from about the elbows down and draw.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, and that's harder to learn than it sounds. You know,
it is.
It sounds like common sense, but go try
it. You know? Yeah, I mean, hell, I've been doing it for off and on 11 years, but seriously for about 4. So it definitely wasn't an overnight thing.
Yeah. Right. Well, and that's me. I went and bought a Glock 44 a couple of weeks ago. In 20 long rifle. Just to practice with, you know, just to, you know, the recoil's not going to be there, but everything else is your sight picture, your grip, your presentation, all that is there. It's a lot cheaper on ammo. And so I told Johnny the other day, and he was laughing at me. I said, you know, I hate dry firing. I tell all my students dry fire, but I hate it. If there's no bang, you know, I ain't having fun. Sorry. Yeah.
You gotta look up the dry fire king video.
Yeah, in the Marine Corps, I was Air Naval Gunfire Liaison. I had control over 16-inch guns with 2,000-pound projectiles. You know, I like the noise.
Yeah, so, and the feel.
And the feel, yep. That's right. But so I figured that was a good alternative to just firing clicks, you know. So now I just got to go out and work on it. But you know, of course, and I think you'll agree with me on this. If your grip's right, the recoil's
doesn't matter.
It's not an issue, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at all.
I think I actually right now this may change, but I'm actually as quick on a bill drill with a 22 as I am with a 9mm, and vice versa. Yep. I mean, I'll shoot about a 3.3 bill drill with either gun. You know, with either.
I mean, a proper bill drill, you should be shooting the gun as fast as you possibly can, because 7 yards isn't much. I mean, I mean, look at Isaac Lockwood. He did a bill drill with all alphas in 1.21.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, he's an alien. I'm not. I'm human. So, 3.3 is about where I'm at right now, but it's the same with a 9 as it is with a 22. So,
really,
if you, the thing is, if you are controlling or managing recoil properly, if you've got the proper grip, and you maintain the proper grip through your firing sequence, the recoil should be not an issue. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And so at 3.3 seconds, I'll tell you this. All right, at over 2.5 seconds, I can see the sights settle for every trigger press.
Yeah,
like. Settle.
At 3.3, I see them the first time, and I just keep firing because I know the gun ain't moving.
Yeah, so so once I break under 2.5, I start getting into predictive shooting, and then just getting one sight picture and just kind of watching that dot bounce up and down through recoil and trigger pressing, and just knowing that it's returning back to where I need it to return to. Under 2 seconds, I might see the dot. I'll definitely see it once, maybe at the most 3 or 4 times through the 6 shots. Because I'm locking it in. I get that one sight picture, and I'm letting it rip 6 times. And as long as I'm doing my part, all 6 will be there.
I'm gonna keep practicing. We'll see where at 6 months from now. I think I'll catch you, man. I'm not as young.
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it. Jerry Mitchell's older than you. He does it.
Who?
Jerry Mitchell. He's older than you. He can do it.
Who is that? Yeah. You should not even say me and Mitchell in the same conversation. Well, buddy, we've been on here an hour and a half. I'm gonna go eat some supper.
Oh, goodness.
I appreciate everybody tuning in.
Yeah, that was good engagement.
Good friends in here.
Yeah, so, that was good engagement.
Hey, y'all do us a big favor, share this around, and we'll try to stay on point one of these days.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good talk, man. I'm glad these people got something out of it.
I hope so. All right, buddy. Hey, good to see you, man. Take care.
Yeah, man. Thanks.